Woohoo! Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm Lyndon. What's up, Allie?
I'm so glad to be back, Lynn. We took a couple weeks off. Fridays were just a little too hard for us traveling gals. So we're moving Tiger Tuesday or Tiger Takes to Thursday. So a little pre-weekend jam for everyone. But I'm so excited to be back. You
Yeah,
look
it's an
pretty in
Auburn
purple.
wedding. So, as Auburn girls, we love a wedding.
We
Tons of them.
And we're just packed in from all of them that got moved in 2020. These Auburn weddings are really stacking up back to back. I have one next weekend in Mexico, and then I have another weekend in St. Louis the weekend after that. So we're popping off on the Southern weddings. The MRS's degree is coming in fruition.
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. And you know what? Speaking of, those MRS degrees, a lot of girls go to college and their first step of, taking that first class in MRS degree life is going through Rush. And I must say, our lovely, lovely producer, who is also the host of Bammers, Matt Scalisi, is a Bama grad. And in the small amount of hours that I've been awake in the past 3 days, I've spent all my awake time on Bama Rush TikTok.
It's
And I've been able
addicting.
to change my name to like Lyndon and Grace and go from there.
I mean, let me just say, I graduated in 2016, so really not that long ago. But let me just tell you, you would have thought we graduated in like the 1950s and went through Rush in like the 1945, based on like how these girls are dressing and how social media. I'm just like, OOTD, like in Rush, I was making sure I just didn't like pass out in between parties because it was so hot and we had so many. I couldn't have even imagined wearing like stilettos and like full blown makeup going through Rush. So
Oh
I'm
my
invested though.
gosh. I'm
I
so
hope
invested. I hope
Michaela and
Michaela
Brinley
Ann
all
Gray
just
gets her sorority and Susan Ann Duncan gets her sorority. And I just hope everyone finds success. I was a Rush counselor my senior year. So
I
like
forget
it's
about
been
that all the time.
a while. Like since I've been like on the side of Rush, the happy side. And I just think
Yeah.
I could not imagine being like this group, like generations counselor, because they would look at me and be like, I'm not going to listen to you. Like,
Exactly. And we were both in sororities at Auburn. I was a DZ and Lynn was an AD Pi, and I was head of invitations my senior year. So like, I mean, I think ours is like the turtle. But I was head of invitations. Like I could not even imagine having to like go through these girls. Like you now have to add TikToks to their social medias to see all of this stuff, and like I officially realized I'm old. I am
yeah. And
very,
all
very,
this is
very
saying
old.
you're watching and you're like, what are y'all talking about? This is not just something in Alabama. This is overtaking the entire
It's
country's viral world.
global.
This is a global movement where these girls are sharing their outfits every day for Rush. I'm sure we're gonna have the same thing for game day outfits. Like I just think
Oh
we are
gosh.
entering this just roller coaster ride, and I'm on it. Hands up in the air. I got it going
I mean,
on.
we're on it. And speaking of, you know, Rush is kind of like the signaling of the new school year. I just said like, wow, every time this year, like I wish I was starting classes. Like it's just like this time of year, I'm like, wow, if I could just like walk to Haley Center one more time with my little backpack on. But Suni Lee is officially enrolled at Auburn. She showed up to campus this week. There was some, a little quiet debate on whether or not she was actually going to enroll after winning the gold. We haven't talked in the individual all around at the Olympics. On paper, the best gymnast of 2020 in the entire world, 2021 in the entire world. A surprise gold, deserved gold, but she is officially an Auburn Tiger, which is just, I think, the coolest thing ever. And I personally agree, the most recognizable face on Auburn's campus since probably Cam Newton came back when he was a student. So
For sure. I'm interested to see how she like navigates the normal life, which I know she's so
yeah,
excited. She's been so gracious towards Auburn and everyone throughout her entire process. And I just can't wait to go down there and watch some gymnastics.
right. I know, like they sold so many season tickets in Auburn Arena, like it's gonna be bumping. And I think she's like you said, she's just been really gracious about the whole process. And if I were her, I'm wearing that gold medal around the Haley Center in line at Chick-fil-A. Like I am rocking it everywhere. And like she already said, like I want to take photos, like I want to embrace everything that this journey has like brought to me. So I think I'm just super excited that she's there. And I know everyone on Twitter is too. They had like a little welcome video for her for the gymnastics team, and all the girls, her teammates were so excited. So, I
I have an
mean, not
idea.
every school. Oh, what's the
We
idea?
can take the fashion advice from Rush TikTok, dress like a college student, go on campus, and get a pic with Suni. And just be like, oh my gosh, I'm your biggest fan. I started class too. Where's your first class in the Haley Center?
As much as I would love to say that I think I could pass as an 18-year-old, I think like my gray hairs and my glasses and my wrinkles will definitely give that give that away. But we can certainly try. We can try.
Oh
And on
my
that
God.
note, we've got SUNY on campus. We've got Rush starting. We are 22 days away from football kicking off in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And the best part about football, to me, outside of winning and all the traditions that come with that, are the rivalries. So today's episode of Tiger Takes, we are breaking down what we view as Auburn's top 5 rivals across all sports, right? We've got,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
a lot of these
obviously we're
combos
gonna
are across all
emphasize
sports.
football because that's like, the center of our world. But like we're gonna just tell you that the 5 schools that really get our blood boiling, no matter if it's, an equestrian meet or the national championship. Like these schools are rivals through and through, and we always hope they lose.
Always hope they lose. Always hope they lose. And some are for personal reasons. I think we've got a little debate on our 1 and 2. I think we have our flops. That'll be really fun. And please let us know if you're watching on this Thursday. I know we kind of changed up the days on you guys. I think next week we might even be on Wednesday because I'm heading to Mexico for a wedding. But thanks for joining us. And if you have a top rival while we're going through these lists, or you agree or disagree, please let us know in the comments. But I think our top 5s are the same. So why don't you kick off who we think are top 5, number 5
Perfect.
biggest
Tigers
rival for
top
Auburn.
rivalries, number 5. It is none other than the step brother to Auburn, Clemson.
Oy vey.
Clemson. So I think our reasons for this being a rival for Auburn are pretty clear. I'll go first. It's kind of like the running joke that they copy Auburn with everything. I saw on Twitter the other day, they were, gassing up their Tiger transits to get ready for students to come back to campus. And it's like, can we be a little different? Can we separate ourselves a little bit? Just a little bit. So I think it's funny to always play them in sports, whether it's basketball, which we're going to just forget about that last little basketball meetup in the tournament, or on football, which we can honestly kind of forget about that last matchup too, with like the quarterback scramble. But it's always fun to play Clemson. And I truly, Dabo is from Pelham. He's a Bama guy. And it makes it even more fun to kind of rub shoulders with them and go at it. What about you? Why did they make your top 5?
No, I agree with all of that. I think for a stretch there a year, our home and home was Clemson I feel like it was that way for the longest time. And
Yeah.
I will preface this. There are some old school rivalries like Georgia Tech that I would love to include, but like Auburn hasn't played them in so long. So I know that they're, a classic rival of Auburn from back in the day, but we're really focusing on, the last maybe 20 decades, 10 decades
Which is
for
even
these
more reason why
rivalries.
we want to know what y'all think. Like we want to hear y'all's comments.
Exactly.
Let's just have the marketplace's
Exactly.
ideas.
Exactly. So Clemson, for those reasons, the copying, the blue and purple, the Auburn with the lake, all of these reasons. But I also have a personal reason. So I should have sent this photo in now that I'm thinking about it. So my older brother is quite a bit older than me. We're from the same parents. Our parents just took a little break. But he went to Clemson. And we were living in Tampa. We're family from Philly. So like Auburn, we knew about it. Obviously, my brothers knew Bo Jackson, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, I'm going to Clemson when I graduate. That's where I want to go. And there's photos of me dressed in little Clemson gear, in middle school for college day. And leading up almost into junior year, that's where I thought I was going to go. And they didn't have a journalism program. And my brother was like, hey, I had a lot of friends go to Auburn. Why don't you check it out? And then I found this journalism camp and I went and fell in love. And now I'm like, ugh, Clemson, who? Like I never would have even stepped foot on that campus now that I have gone to Auburn. But I have some personal ties because my brother's got some bragging rights. And it's annoying and it's very frustrating, but I think we might right the turn if we were to play them in football here shortly. But that's a personal rivalry reason that you always want the bragging rights inside the family. mean, Clemson fans are just, the ACC is different as a whole. I feel like those fan bases just kind of are a lot different than the ICC. They kind of are the little brother to the SEC. But Clemson fans, for whatever reason, really believe that they could take down an SEC season from start to finish. And I just don't know if they could. So that's always a little fun to poke, that if they really could go from start to finish in the SEC. But those are my reasonings for Clemson being a rival.
I must ask, when,
Ooh, please do.
they play Alabama, do we pull that little Clemson cheer uniform out of, your dress up drawer? Because I'll tell you what, when they played and when they beat Alabama out there in San Fran a couple years ago, I mean, I was working the game. So, we have the small celebrations inside your heart, but I did take some like confetti because I was like, okay.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, as much as I hate my brother having the bragging rights and getting a natty over us, yeah, I mean, I'm going to take everybody but one team in the country over Alabama all the time. So there's one team that I would never want to win, and we'll share that later on, but I'd rather Clemson wipe the floor with Alabama 24/7. So that's why they're our number 5 and not our top, our top Auburn rivals. But here, our number 4, I think we kind of split. Same state, but we kind of split up.
Yeah, and
so why don't you really kick us off?
Your take. I'll go first. So I'm Florida State, number 4 for sure. And it's hard, and I feel like I had to put them at number 4 because of almost like a duty to like the other 3, But I will say, we're talking about all sports here. Obviously, I was at that game when Florida State and Auburn played the national championship. Worst day of my life. Just kidding. But
you don't even need to really remind folks of that.
It was literally like, I just remember walking out that stadium and just the amount of sadness I felt was just something you can't, like, I came in on such a high that game, like, when The Price is Right, like, Measure Carry, like, tailgate party.
We were going like this.
Crash, and it was awful. And Jameis Winston, who also just whooped my high school team's butt when he played at Hueytown. Like, it's just not
a little fun fact.
So, the obvious is football, but I will say, at the College World Series this year for softball, I love softball. I was rooting for the Bama softball team over the Florida State softball team. Like,
whoa.
I don't know what it was, but maybe it's because growing up, I just had such a respect for Bama softball, like playing softball in the state. But, I mean, Florida State, I was just like, please. Like, I hated them the most. So that kind of just shows the different, like, sports, And I think their baseball team would want to beat them every single time. Like, it's just, I have a deep, deep hatred for Florida State.
That's so interesting, especially since, I mean, I guess you did spend some time in Tampa, so you kind of got to be around some Noles fans. And I will say I do not like FSU, but my number 4 rival for Auburn are the Florida Gators. Because growing up in Florida, growing up in Tampa, it was Gators or die. You had your Noles fans, you had your USF fans growing up in Tampa, but it was Gators or bust. And look at that. Shane Smith. Auburn fans never want Bama to win.
Shane.
See?
It was, I told you, it was.
You're going to take the Alabama softball team.
I don't know what came over me, but my gosh, I did not want Florida State. And half their little team were girls I covered when I worked in Sarasota. And I was like, oh, that's good for like the Lakewood Ranch girl. But no, strike out, lose. I don't know what happened.
And especially in softball, man. Alabama's kind of whooped Auburn the last few years. So, but growing up, the Gators were just everywhere. And that would have been the school had I stayed in state that I'd gone to, but I just couldn't get myself. And obviously, the rivalry, Auburn and Florida have had a deep, deep rivalry with some big, big games. The field goal to send them with the arm swing. I mean, there's so many key moments that have happened throughout that series and in basketball as of late too, with Auburn kind of stepping up and that being a really good cross-conference rival. And obviously they lost in 2019. I matched with a guy on Bumble the other day and he was a Florida fan. And so I said, like, go Gators. And he was like, yeah, it's so weird. It must really suck to lose to the Gators. And I was like, excuse me, unmatched, because that's just rude to bring up like that.
Did you really unmatch?
No, we kept talking, but I wanted to I wanted to unmatch because it's just like, who says that? So my whole life has been surrounded by Gators, and they're the orange and blue. Ours is better. Theirs is just too light. Gainesville is Gainesville. It's literally the swamp. The hottest place I've ever been to in my entire life is in
Ever.
Gainesville. And the fans are just, Florida's a great school. You have to be very smart, especially in state, to get in. And they know that. And they love to say that. Very similar to Georgia in state kids who know they have to be smart to get in. And they like to tell people that all the time.
It's like us
Florida
Auburn
fans are
in-state
very,
kids too. Like we know we're really smart, and it's just really hard
well,
to get into
duh.
our school.
But you don't need to sit there and tell everybody, right? So Florida on the field, and I feel like Auburn also goes to a lot of recruiting battles with Florida. They're kind of the school outside of Georgia, Alabama, LSU. It's usually like the Florida kids that
Yeah.
Auburn's trying to pull, especially when guys like Damian Craig was there. He was a Florida guy that definitely helped pull a lot of kids out of that state. T-Rob, when Muschamp took over D coordinator, I mean, they had 3 Florida commits flip. And that big cat, which was the craziest day I think I've ever covered in recruiting. But there's some big, recruiting rivalries that have gone down as well for kids out of the state of Florida. So I think, again, another personal reason. I'm a petty person. I'm a petty sports fan. That's should be pretty obvious out of now that I love posting, a little Facebook status or an Instagram story when Auburn wins, which has been, again, I'm against Florida, not very much, but to post and let all my, back home friends in the state realize that I fled the coop and I went to an Alabama school. But Florida and Florida State are kind of interchangeable. I feel like they're usually in a lot of people top 5 for Auburn fans, especially with the national championship of Florida State in the last decade. So Florida schools are just, I left for a reason. How about that? I went to the great state of Alabama for a reason.
Uh,
Oh, look at that. But I did. Kenzie Jones, you're welcome for turning into a Lightning fan. That is the one good thing about the state of Florida is obviously the Tampa Bay
while we're
Lightning.
talking about Florida, let's just
While
get
we're
the
talking about
locals.
hockey. Yeah, exactly. But I think our number 3, we can kick it off. We're leaving the pettiness behind. Now we're getting into the meat and grind of true Auburn rivalries. We feel like coming in for both of us, I think at number 3 is LSU and Baton Rouge, the fellow Tigers. My God, the day we win in Baton Rouge, I will be a very happy, happy little Allie Davison, and I will make sure to tweet it until the cows come home because
Let's
I
think
just
of
hate
something
losing.
like for you to do if they win in Baton Rouge.
Well, as Matt Scalisi, our lovely producer, knows, if Alabama had made the Final Four, I was getting an Alabama tattoo somewhere on my body, and I had made that jokingly on Twitter, and it came back to very much haunt me as they were semi-close to making the Final Four. So no tattoos. I've given up. A little too close for comfort. So I'm not going to bet any tattoos, but I'll smoke a cigar. I'll pull out the cigar and take a photo on Twitter if we win Baton Rouge this year, which I think could be the upset road game for Auburn winning, which we can talk
And
about on
maybe
another
if
episode.
Auburn loses, you can put like a purple streak in your hair for the week or something.
Ooh, I know I would definitely shine in white blonde. I'll do that. I'll shake on it. I will take a cigar with a purple stripe in my hair if we win in Baton Rouge. Write it down. Lock it in. I will take that bet. But I think there's just something about LSU, Auburn, like the little sisters in the West, always to Alabama. We get that all the time. It's always one of us taking down the big dog. Obviously, we haven't won Baton Rouge in quite a while, and that's always heartbreaking. And then in basketball, there's been some really, really close games the last couple of seasons with Bruce and Will Wade at LSU. So I think there's a lot there. And I think it's just, you hate to say it, but it's the 2 guys underneath Alabama in the West. And then we kind of go back and forth. Obviously, you have Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Arkansas that kind of, jump in there every now and then. But it really is us 2 that kind of fight for that second position. And I think that comes with a chip on your shoulder, knowing that you're fighting for a second. And that kind of comes with bragging rights. I will say Baton Rouge, we mentioned this on an episode, that was my favorite away game. Absolutely love Baton Rouge and the people there. I know a lot of people can't say the same. But the people were great to us, and I've always had great experiences when they were in Auburn. But man, oh man, I'll dye my whole head purple if we can get that win in Baton Rouge.
Oh my gosh. No, yeah, go to Baton Rouge is always fun. You hear tiger bait like ringing in your ear for like the next 3 weeks. It feels like the fans were nice, but they're intense. Like, I remember specifically this one time we were just trying to walk to the stadium. That's back when like twerk became like a word, you know? I guess.
Man, we are so old.
And they had like chalked off like the twerk zone, and like none of us like twerk. Like they were like, you can't go to the stadium unless you like twerk in the twerk zone.
Oh God.
Wild.
Yikes.
In Tiger Bay.
Yikes.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
A lot. But no, it's one of the best weeks of the year for football. It's always exciting, and it'll just, it's funny that they moved up like the Georgia game, just like moved the LSU game back. It's like you just really can't catch a break, can you?
You're playing before Alabama or after LSU. So, I mean, kind of take your poison. And I'm just looking at this record that we have up 23, 31-1. I didn't actually think Auburn was behind by 10 against LSU. That's a little surprising, actually. I knew we were down in the series, but I definitely did not think we were down by 10. So maybe Harsin, I think that'd be a big win for Harsin too, right? To beat LSU on the road for the first time since I think 93.
Yeah,
I think it is.
Need some like big kapow wins for sure.
Yeah, I think that would be a good one for the fan base too, to kind of get behind them for sure. And here's our number 2. I think everyone can guess what the 2 are, but our orders are a little different. So why don't you kick off who your number 2 is?
So my number 2 is Georgia, because and Allie's just gonna go deep into why she feels it's number 1. I just can't wait, because like she calls me at least like once a week to go on a rant about them. Like we'll be talking about serious things like work, and then she'll be like, "But this, this Georgia girl," and I'm like, "Oh God!" I'm like, "Here we go again." But my Georgia is number 2, just because obviously Deep South's oldest rivalry. I actually like loved Georgia growing up. Like I always had my dad like take me to that game. I don't know, like just let me. I now have the Facebook statuses to prove it. I don't delete them. I just let them sit there. Like I was just,
the receipt.
A sports reporter. I loved everybody, but I remember my dad like surprising me when I was probably a freshman in high school playing in a basketball tournament at Auburn High School with like tickets to the Georgia game, and I went in my little basketball uniform. I was so excited. But I think as far as rivalries go, this one is heated, and I know especially like all of our friends that are from Georgia look forward to this one every single year, because you're going to get barked at. You're going to have to just endure, especially if you go to Athens. I mean, they're tough. They throw things at you. Like we're not, this is not a bashing fan bases, but it's just like, so, like you better gear up and suit up and put on, your boots and be ready, because it's not the most friendliest place to go. It's no Texas A&M. Texas A&M to me are the friendliest fans. So it's just
for sure
fun. And I hope, we get some magical moments. It's been tough lately. It's been tough with a lot of our rivals lately, which is why we're in the position that we're in right now with a new head coach, Brian Harsin. So, but yeah, they're my number 2 because, and this is where I think the difference is, like Allie lives in Georgia, I live in Alabama. And so I'll get into my number 1, but Allie, I guess you can just kind of briefly touch on your number 2, because we're just going to continue to flip flop and talk about why we put what where.
Exactly. So like you said, I think also is like Auburn fan decade, right? So like the last 10 years, Auburn and Georgia have really gone at it with some crazy games. I mean, Auburn's obviously again losing another series, 56-61, and then we haven't won more than that in the last decade, but we've won in very big crucial moments, like the prayer and Jordan Hare and like the beat down that we did in Athens when we went back to back, or in Auburn when we went back to back. So we've won some pretty big games. When we win against Georgia, it's a big game, and when we lose, it's very ugly.
Yeah.
But I think just living in Georgia, everyone here is a Georgia fan. I mean, the car stickers, the alumni groups, the people you work with, the people on dating apps, everywhere you go, it's just bulldogs barking. Athens is the greatest place on earth, nonstop 24/7. And then you have this little pocket of quite a lot of us, but a smaller pocket of Auburn fans that are in Atlanta specifically, that drive our little cars, their little Auburn alumni stickers, and getting cut off by the big old Georgia G truck that's coming at you on the highway. But it's just something about it. I think over the last decade, a lot of my friends that I went to Auburn with are from Georgia. living in this state, I think that's just kind of the reason why I have them above Alabama, who I think naturally would be the biggest rivalry. But I think a lot of my friends, we kind of had this discussion the other day as I was gearing up for the show. I was just kind of asking my friends who they thought, and all of them, I think there's 11 of us in this group text. I think 10 out of 11 chose Georgia over Alabama as Auburn's biggest rival. So I think it's definitely like a
interesting.
Yeah, right. I think it's like a generational thing, maybe. Again, I said the last decade, I went to school. I didn't grow up an Auburn fan, so that wasn't like engraved. I understand how big the Iron Bowl is. I understand what that means, but there's just something about that week in Georgia. The weather's always a little spooky cold. It's always a night game, and it's always, the barking, the lot of Miller Lights you pound before an Auburn Georgia game that kind of just heightens up everything. And again, the recruiting battles, especially when I was covering it, I mean, every kid that had Auburn in their top 5 had Georgia in their top 5 and vice versa. And especially when Kirby Smart started, it became even more heightened. Auburn had kind of widened the gap of getting Georgia players over. I mean, it's an hour and a half away. It's just from Atlanta, it's the same distance from Athens to Auburn. So, I mean, Auburn had blown up that Georgia border, but Kirby Smart has kind of kept it on lock as of late. So that just heightens up, the kids on the football team get more hyped up. I mean, there's so many kids from Georgia on the team that when they play, it means something. If they didn't get that Georgia offer or they chose Auburn over Georgia, like that just puts a chip on their shoulder and vice versa for kids that are on Georgia. So I think it's always a little chippy. It's always a little fun to turn around to the Georgia fan that's in the, young alumni section at Jordan Hare and say, what are you doing here? Who do you know?
Yeah.
They're usually dating an Auburn girl, so that must mean something. But it's just something about it.
Yeah, that's a good point about just the amount of Georgia players on Auburn's team and kind of, they're kind of like how you stepped out of your comfort zone. You left Tampa. They're taking a risk to stepping out, maybe going against their family that's all Bulldogs and playing for Auburn. And I think Auburn has a soft spot for Georgia players. I mean, I want to bring this up. First off, thoughts with Craig Ogletree's family after his passing this week. Yeah. But I liked one of the things when they were talking about him in one of the articles that, like, Pat Dye loved him. He was one of Pat Dye's guys. He was just a good old boy from like South Georgia. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Like Auburn goes after like, South Georgia guys and, just like they're hard workers. And it's really cool for them to go up against their high school teammates in that rivalry and play. It's kind of special.
Yeah. No, it is. Why don't you kick us off? Everyone, I think I'm in the minority. Maybe we can do a poll on Twitter or on the AL.com Facebook to see who they think the top rivalry is. But why don't you kick us off with why Alabama reigns supreme in this rivalry with Auburn?
I mean, because, Alabama. There we go. So let's open up this can of worms. First off, working in television here in Alabama and being around a lot of people that come from out of state, like people just think there's Alabama. And this should make Auburn fans mad. Auburn fans, this should fire you up. Because I'm like, wait, y'all, but, you moved here. There's 2 big universities. You have Bama and Auburn. Like, that's just how big that Alabama brand is nationwide, globally. Like, they think that is it. And we talked about this before. A lot of people can't even tell you that Auburn is actually in the state of Alabama. And I think it just makes their rivalry even more heated because if you grow up here, you do have to pick. Like my cousins that went to Alabama, like we never celebrated Iron Bowl or not. Well, I guess we did celebrate Thanksgiving. Like we did Thanksgiving lunch. It was never Thanksgiving dinner because we had to go back to our perspectives. Like either they would save me at Auburn, we go to Tuscaloosa to make sure you get there for the game. It is just so important. And I truly don't know where else you get this kind of hype around these 2 teams. And this all centers back to Bama Rush TikTok. And so many people, I feel like, go to Alabama because of the Greek life. Like, I'm going to just put one of my best friends on blast, Olivia Lee, shout out. There's an Auburn room in her room. Like, Auburn paint on the walls. And where did she go to school? Alabama. And it's like, but growing up, you were just surrounded with one school. And some people do go rogue. I think it's strictly based off like Greek life. So that's what I think.
Great point. That's a great point. Brian, Auburn is its own rivalry worst enemy. Honestly, that's a great take. And had I had the brain capacity to think like that and be so critical thinking, I would have agreed that we are our own worst enemy. Who do you think will win the Iron Bowl?
I mean,
I'm gonna say,
I'm gonna say
I don't know. I'm gonna
Alabama.
say let us see how the first 5 games go.
If you had to pick, if I had to pick today, I would for sure say Alabama.
Yeah, I
Talk
think.
to me after Akron. Talk to me after Akron.
Yeah, I mean, the sunshine in me wants to say Harson's going to win. Georgia, one of the two out of Georgia and Alabama just kind of seems like it's prime at Jordan-Hare. Alabama fans always say they hate to play in Jordan-Hare because just the spooky witches of, Auburn Jesus just mix up their cauldron when they come in to play into town. But I think I'd have to say Alabama at this point. We don't even know who's going to start quarterback, right?
But how lucky now that both basketball programs are just so competitive that we can take this passion, this, gusto, and just keep it year round. Just like,
I mean, I think that's just what makes it fun, right? It's always been ESPN's number one rivalry over the Yankees in Boston, Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, this little old state with no professional teams and these two teams on the opposite side of the state just go head to head, very different, very small, very big, powerhouse, underdog. I mean, there's so many just oppositions that go over this that it makes it fun. And now that Alabama has stepped it up on the court, and I think Bruce Pearl's success at Auburn kind of forced Alabama's hand because there's no way that they were just going to let them gain all the success across the state, even when it came to recruiting. So I think that just makes it more fun.
To me, this is how you rank your rivalries. I was monitoring AL.com's articles on the Olympians and who medaled and counting how many former Alabama athletes were getting medals going to the Olympics versus Auburn people. Because even when we're all on Team USA, I still want Auburn to have the edge over Alabama.
It really gave me a lot of giddiness when I had to see Alabama fans on Twitter really give Suni Lee the love she deserved, because not only is she's not a former Auburn grad, she didn't transfer out. She is very proud Auburn, soon to be freshman, and that just brings me all the joy in the world that she'll be on the plains taking it to the beam against those Alabama gymnasts. Just really, and she won a gold for USA, so how can you hate? Exactly, and I think you kicked it. I mean, there's not much more I can say. I mean, I think the difference is just where we live and kind of you grew up in it having to choose. I grew up around a lot of Georgia friends when I started at Auburn, and that just kind of ingrained, the Bulldogs in me. But I do not want Alabama to lose unless they're playing Georgia. So any other team in the country can walk through and take an L or give Alabama an L outside of Georgia, which is tough, especially when it was that natty title. I was like, this is my worst nightmare, just happening, replaying live. But that is the only time that I ever want to see the Crimson Tide take a W is over those Georgia Bulldogs. So I think it's a good list. I think a lot of people would agree with us. I mean, like I said, Georgia Tech would have been, I'm sure, for some of our older folks that, have been around the block, that was a big rivalry. And I think we have an episode that we want to do of rivalries that we want to bring back, or teams that we would love Auburn to play in a home-and-home series, which I think would really be a lot of fun too. But it's football. It's ready, and I am so ready. The more and more we get closer and Auburn starts dropping these videos and the kids, I mean, I saw someone say this on Twitter that the guys just look bigger, and that's partially probably because they didn't have off-season workouts last year. They kind of just rolled into the season without much, but they've had a lot of time to prep. And Harsin is really, really into strength. I think he does the workouts with the team, which is great. So the kids already look bigger. I'm ready. I know Akron is going to be a jumping night game at Jordan-Hare to kick off. Are you going to be there for kickoff?
I don't know. I mean, it just depends on where I am sit, but I'll either be there or Atlanta. So we shall see.
Oh, who are you going to be covering in Atlanta? Is there another team that you have to? Oh, no. I will say that. I will ask that. Is that hard? Because I remember I've only had to when I was covering recruiting, like obviously, like I was at Auburn 95% of the
Yeah.
time. You're an Auburn grad if you're covering these recruits. So I didn't really have to like ever hide it. But working in and having to genuinely cover Alabama as part of your job, is it ever hard to just be like, wow, like I really got to do this?
No, I mean, like, obviously on Tiger Takes, we get to just, like, have fun and be free. Like, you're not going to catch me on the local news saying this stuff or, like, talk, because it's not about
Yeah.
that when you're covering them. It's truly about the players. And I never really understood that until, like, you work in this.
That's a good
Even a
point.
lot of beat writers for Auburn and or Bama will say, like, I mean, I'm not a fan of either, but I hope so-and-so does well. And that's the truth. It's like you want the players to do well. No.
Oh, yikes.
No, but I mean,
Ooh.
I will say, like, the toughest times, or when people just talk about how cool Bryant Denny is, or how cool Tuscaloosa is, or how loud. And I'm like, but if y'all just go a little further south, like, there's something I get
There's
like
this little
jealous
tiny
like that.
place.
But no, I mean, like, wish the player. I mean, truly, you get to know the players, you interview them, wish them the best, and go team go. It's not as hard as I thought it would be. I'm still blocked by some like Bama people. I guess from like college when I was just like all in Auburn. It's just really funny to see because it's like I really don't talk any crap. Like I'm here.
I can't say the same.
You.
Can't say the same. But I mean, again, I'm just like a petty person. So like, I just really hate losing. And the fact that like Georgia's on this run with Kirby Smart and it's, they're going to win it for the first time in what is it? Like 1,000 years. And then obviously Nick Saban is doing, but you have respect. I think that's also why I probably have Alabama too. Cause like, I do respect what like Nick Saban's done, right? I mean, he's going to go down as the greatest college football coach of all time and no one will come close to the dynasty that he built. That'll probably withstand after he leaves, which is also just as irritating. But I think so. There's respect there, right? But like, we won a natty since, I was not born when Georgia won their last one in 1980. No one I know, a lot of people I know, were not born in 1980. So no one has seen it. So, I mean, it's been a long time. It's an empty trophy case for in Athens.
We always have 2010.
Oh God, and almost 2013 and almost 2017. We really can get about down the almost. Again, Auburn's biggest rivalry is himself. Well, why don't we end the show with our favorite segment? So I'm just so happy to be back on Tiger Takes after a little hiatus. We've got our Tiger Toast. Lynn, why don't you share what you are toasting this weekend?
I'm toasting a good old water filled with a vitamin C packet, and I'm going to toast to sleep. Y'all, I'm a little loopy today, if you cannot tell. I'm exhausted, but you know what? This is the best little energy boost. Talking with you, hanging out with my Auburn peeps. This show's so much fun, and we're just really thankful that y'all join us every week. But yeah, I'm going to drink some vitamin C and some water, and I'm going to rest because high school football starts Thursday, a week from today. So my world's about to rock all the way into New Year's Eve. So we're just going to relax and get ready to cruise.
I'll be cheersing you right there with you. And I think I'm going to cheers to all of the soon-to-be Auburn family members, all of these freshmen rolling in. I would go back in an absolute heartbeat. Most of you guys can't drink yet, but I'll be cheersing you with a fat glass of wine this weekend, being so jealous that you get to experience everything that Auburn has to give. It's the best place on earth. I think me and Lyndon can both agree. So to all the parents out there, congratulations on sending your kid to the best in the state. And I just hope everyone enjoys, as long as, some of us took longer than 4 years. And I hope they just enjoy every second because I miss it all the time, especially around this time of the year for sure.
And don't be afraid to step out and try something new once you get on campus. And all the sorority rush girls, Allie and I were not in the same sorority. So you're going to meet great friends in your sorority, but also branch out. I would have branched out sooner. We kind of got friends like close to the end. Like, be friends with everyone. You never know who you're going to meet, and the relationships last a lifetime. So there you go.
Last a lifetime. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, guys, again on this Thursday. Tiger Takes will be Thursday from now on. Fridays were just a little too hard for us traveling girls, especially when football gets kicked off. But next week will be Wednesday, so make sure you guys tune in. But thanks for joining me. And Lyndon, I hope you get some sleep, gal. You deserve it.
Yeah, I love you. Bye. Bye, guys.